Okay, hello and welcome to Navigating to Success. I'm your host, Jeff Carlton, and we're going to explore some business journeys. I have with me today Igor Chernetsky, who owns Victory Truck Shop. I'm very honored to have him. And without further ado, I'm going to let Igor introduce himself and tell you what he does.
Yes, as Jeff said, my name is Igor Chernetsky. I actually own Victory Transportation. It's a trucking company, local regional trucking company in the West Coast. We have multiple locations in the West Coast, and we also am the owner of Victory Truck Shop that has spun out of that. That we do basically truck repairs, and we have two locations at the moment for that business. So with that, it's there's a couple of other companies I co-own in the freight space. So I, like you said, very versed in the transportation space at the moment.
So, do you consider yourself a logistics company or specifically a trucking company?
It's a logistics company because we do not only trucking, we do middle mile, we do first mile, and sometimes we do last mile as well. We used to have a full last mile division that has spun off when that was taken by the partners I had. So they run that company specifically now, but we are still logistics because we do warehousing on top of that, and we do intermodal. We do intermodal, we do rail work as well. So it's a multiple logistics involved sometimes. So
Awesome. How long have you been in the business?
about 15 years now.
15 years. That's great. So, what inspired you to get in this line of work? What was the entrepreneurial spark, if you will?
Well, it was I don't think there was a desire to get into this business, to be honest. My dad needed help, and in the Slavic culture where I come from, I'm Ukrainian. When your parents ask you something that's not a question, you just do it. You help out. So it was something we just I helped in the beginning, and that came from help to taking over and running the company. But it started out very young. I started working when I was very very young. As a kid, as 8 9 years old. I started working and was taught the work ethic, the understanding the business, from a very young age, from my father and a few other people, mentors along the way.
You bring up a great point that is important. You don't get there by yourself. You have mentors that help you along the way. There's always somebody there helping. That's a great story. I love that. Now that are you the sole business owner or are you a partner?
I have minority partners in the companies, but majority owner at the moment.
Right. So what what would you say are common misconceptions that people might have about becoming an entrepreneur and running their own business?
Well, I think a lot of things that I've seen is they can't differentiate between a business and a company. And for me, it's different. A business it's systems. It's a whole system that everything has to work together. A company is a name. You can have trucks. You can have equipment. Doesn't matter what you're running. It's a company. It doesn't take a whole lot of knowing or understanding to open up a company, an LLC, an S corp, anything else. Really, you don't need a lot. But to run a business, it means you have to completely become a different person. You have to understand how to deal with people. It's where I was talking with a mentor of mine just a week ago, and one of the things that came from him that just reminded me that the hardships of leadership will never go away as long as you're in a position of leadership. And that's what it is. It's where you become a leader. You become a leader to everybody that works for you. And that is something that people think that if you do really good work as a worker, you can become a really good owner. And those are not even close to being the same. You can be the best, and I'll even go one further. You can be the best manager there is and still be a horrible owner. And those are two completely different things too. And so with those, it's just understanding the the hardships of that means all the issues, all the problems. To some people, you need to be a friend. To some people, you'll need to be a babysitter and just babysit, pat them on the back. And to some people, you'll need to be the guy that let them cry on the shoulders, but whatever else it is. And so that is the entrepreneur. You want to grow something, you want to do something, you'll have to become a different person than you are now. And so if you like who you are now, probably not the journey for you. And you're gonna have to keep changing every single day, every single month, every single year. It never stops, because as soon as you think you know something, something else comes up that you just had no idea about. And on top of that, it's where it's a good friend of mine. It's what they call mind power. They have a mind power coaching company. It's called they have a couple of programs like Mind Power Breakthrough and other ones with Steph and Shay. That's their brand is Steph and Shay. It's, you know, we talk about, it's that resilience is what they call it. It's the internal, the mind resilience to be able to, especially what we're going right now through the recession. I mean, it's here, we're going through it. I can probably go on for days explaining how tough and how crazy everything is, you know, in every single one of the companies. But at the end of the day, it falls on me to make sometimes very hard decisions and not to lose my cool and lose my head.
That's that. It's a very good synopsis of you have to learn to become a mentor along the way as well. And leadership is something that I would say you never stop learning. There's always another way to do it. But um, so you kind of touched on, I'm going to pull another thread that you brought up. What methods have you used to stay adaptable to change in these kind of turbulent waters? You mentioned the recession and everything. So how has adaptability figured into how you chart your course?
Well, I have accountability partners that I always talk to, and the biggest thing is where I try not to be above anything or above anyone, above any job. And again, even now, this upcoming Sunday, I'm flying out to one of the bases we have, and I'm getting into a truck and I'm driving the truck. And doesn't mean if I have 100 people working for me, I'm getting into the truck, I'm driving the truck because it's needed. Because we can't fill the truck right now, and while it's getting filled up, while we get the drivers to do that, I'm getting in the truck. And not only that, I have the GMs and the safety guys. Everybody's driving part-time the truck for now to be able to offset salaries, offset costs for us to make it through. There's nobody's above it. And the biggest and most important thing that I would tell absolutely anybody is having the right team. I don't think I could stress that well enough. If you have the right team, you can go to any battle. If you don't, then you're always worried.
I love that you mentioned team. That's so important that you talk about your GM and your drivers and your managers, but you refer to them as the team. The three pillars of business: time, team, and money. Um, that's really great. Um, so on the leadership and you're actually going to go and jump in a truck. Is that because you can't fill the truck because you can't find drivers, or what drives
Well,
you
it's
into that position?
it's a little bit of everything. I could probably make one of the managers do it, but if I'm not willing to do it myself, I was always taught that if you can't do it yourself, then don't make anybody else do it. So I have to be able to show and willing to the. I'm not above anything. I am in the truck. I'm here. I'm going to do whatever it takes, and then to lead by example. It's leading by example is actually leading by example. It's actually doing the deed. It's not explaining to somebody. It's not telling somebody, it's doing it. And this is what it takes. It reminds me of the story of George Washington when he got, to the people and he would say, hey, to the sergeant in charge, I believe it was, And he was sitting around while all his men is digging the trench, and he's like, "Why aren't you digging the trench?" And the guy goes, "Well, you're so cool. Why don't you get down? You dig it." And he got off and dug the trenches until later on, then he finds out this is George Washington. He's like, "The nobody's above it. And nobody should be above it. If this is what it is, and this is times, regardless if it's if it was tough, if it's hey, we need to be able to go through and do something. It should start from the top, the absolute top. If you say somebody this is what it needs to be, and you never do it, the chance of them believing that it actually needs to happen are very small. Unless they absolutely trust you, even then they'll question it. Compared to you doing it, then you don't have to explain to them that it needs to be done. They can see it that it needs to be done.
You just hit another key word that I think is incredibly important, and that's trust. Um, when the people trust their leadership, then the organization works well. If there's a distrust in the leadership, then it starts to bring out systemic problems. So, leading by example and establishing that trust with your team, um, that's admirable. I appreciate that insight very much. Um, Given that you stated that you have some challenges with filling the trucks and the recession and everything, what are your future plans? Where do you see Victory Trucking, Victory Transportation going in 12, 36, 60 months from now?
Oh, we're gonna be doubling and tripling in size. I mean, we're gonna be growing. We're gonna be doing it. Albeit different course than we thought a month ago or a year ago. With where we are now, we have to understand that um, not to picture ourselves, rainbows and unicorns. It's tough. It's going to be tough. It could be a lot more harder, going forward. But doesn't mean we're going to stop. We'll have to change course, pivot how we get there. The biggest thing is the results. What's the end result? What are we trying to achieve? And when we try to achieve that result, from then on out, it's just okay, how do we get there? We're going to be the goal is to become the best trucking company in the West Coast. There's not many good trucking company on the West Coast. It's East, Midwest. There's a lot. I want to be West Coast dominant. We know the West Coast. We're here. We know exactly what to do. We know it's not East Coast. You can drive for 5 hours and pass 15 states. In the West Coast, you can drive for 13 hours and still be in the same state. So this is where we're at, and this is where talking about Montana, talking about California. I mean, these are massive states with passes, multiple passes. I mean, you can drive for 10 hours and pass 7 passes. I mean, this is where people don't understand in most companies, but to become the dominant force here in the West Coast, but that's gonna take a lot of hard work, and I understand that. We're not shying away from it. We're gonna pivot. We're gonna do whatever it takes. We're gonna get our feet back from under us wherever we are, and then push forward again.
I like it. So two questions that came out of that. And by the way, I really appreciate the fact that you can drive for 13 hours and still be in the same state because Montana, getting people on the east of the Mississippi to understand that you don't judge distance in miles, you judge it in time and and how long between gas stations.
Mhm.
Um, because that's a thing too. But um, do you have a formalized plan? Do you have a strategic plan that you're gonna be double or triple in size by a certain date?
Oh yeah,
Um,
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. We have it, with our COO and the CFO. We've sat down and we look at it on a weekly and we tweak it on a weekly, because other factors come into play that we didn't expect. So then we have to look at it and say, okay, is this still the best plan? Do we change something? Do we move something? So this is where we look at it, and then from then on we start changing, look at it. But yeah, absolutely. We have the plan. We have the bases, what other bases we need to launch, what other customers need to come and play, and how that needs to happen step by step to be able to achieve that within the next again, it's not a exact date. The date is more a range. It's this range where we give ourselves a range. It's a 12-month range between this and this, and this is where we need to be, and within that time, so we can pivot and have the chance to be able to have the end goal in pen, but have the plan written in pencil.
right. The other question is you said you want to be the best trucking company on the West Coast. how would you measure that? What would quantify that and to that you could say, okay, that makes us the best? What would be specific for you?
Well, it's not about me. You can talk about yourself all you want. It's what other people say about you. That's what I consider being the best. When everybody around you is telling you you're the best, that's how it is. Because we can tell usually to ourselves, we're doing pretty good, we're doing great. But how is it coming off from the people working with us, for us, or vendors or clients? Would they say the same thing? And that's what we're going to. And we're getting feedback when we get clients, and customers like Sigmar down in California, and they're saying we've never had any trucking company give us the service you guys are giving us. That tells me something. That means we're doing something right. It means okay, we need to continue on. We have to do this. We have to set this up. This is how it is. But so it's not coming from us. It's where how do drivers when our drivers are saying, hey, this, when they're coming on board and they're like, we've never had to go through 4 interviews to be able to be hired on with the trucking company. That never happens, like, well, this is how we do it. We only have the best drivers. So that means we have to go pretty far, vetting these drivers and so forth. So it's both internal and external that we get that telling us, hey, you guys, this is the best. I absolutely think this is the best company I've ever worked for. Great. That gives me and telling me, okay, that came from somebody else. This is how they see it. They went on the market. I only see my company, what I'm trying to do. I know the market more or less, but I'm not participating in other companies. I'm not driving for other companies. These drivers are, and they're coming over to us. This is what they're saying. So to me, that's how I consider it.
Okay, so you measure it as a qualitative feedback. Um, so that takes me to another a spin off onto you talk a lot about your team and the other drivers. How do you collect that feedback from the drivers? Is it just when they offer it, or do you have a formal mechanism in place to get feedback from your drivers?
No, we talk with our drivers. We try to talk at least once a month is the goal, to at least talk to every driver in some capacity to understand where they are, how we're doing, how they're doing, how the two are aligning, what we can do. So, that goes through, and then we have, every week we have our management meetings that then we go through and we start talking about that in between managements, getting feedback and understanding the feedback and doing something about it.
That's fantastic. And what about the customers? Do you have a formal outreach after a delivery's been made to get their feedback, or is it a passive feedback process?
Some is passive, some is formal. We go back, we try to talk to the more managers and brokers once a quarter, going back to understand them, how we doing, how we are, where our shortfalls are and what's going on, and then from then on, trying to if we need to change processes or change something, and we've even had to the point where we've gotten feedback about certain drivers that we had to let go because of the feedback that we got from them, from the customers, because it was just unacceptable. That's not how I want to be perceived as a company. And the company is not me. The company is everybody working for us, with me, alongside me. That is what the company is. And so if the drivers are cursing the customers out at the ship or at the shipper or at the receiver, that's who our company is. And so absolutely not tolerated, gone, fired. I mean, we had to fire quite a few people for that, just as simple as, and when we hire them on, we tell them, I do not tolerate cursing. I don't care for what and what the reason is.
Well, I, I appreciate that. Um, that's great. So what advice? Oh, before I move on to kind of the last question, how big are you? Give me an idea of the scope of how
With
many
so
trucks, how
victory
many
is
employees?
currently victory is in starting from more east would be Salt Lake City, Butte, Montana, Spokane, Washington, Seattle, Washington, Portland, Oregon, Stockton, California, and Los Angeles, California. That's where our bases are. We're at about 100 employees, right shy of 100 employees. I think right around 100. I hovered back and forth between 100 employees, and then 70 plus drivers at the moment that we have on the road.
So it's 100 employees plus the 70 drivers.
No, it's within the 100 employees. Is about 70. The rest of them are office, support staff,
Okay.
safety, shop, and so forth.
Yeah, so about 2 to 3 people per hub, plus then your management staff. Okay, that helps me put it in perspective. And your fleet of trucks, uh, how big?
It's like I said, 70. I think it was 73 at the moment. With the trucks and maybe even more now. We had purchased some more trucks, so maybe up to 80 at the moment. But with the trucks, it's kind of spread out within the bases. It's just updated some of the fleets. Just to be able to, especially with the California regulations, the Washington certain ones, so we're to pushing, some of the newer trucks right now.
Fantastic. All right, so the $1 million question, what advice would you offer out to an aspiring entrepreneur, somebody that's just breaking in or considering getting in and starting their own business?
Well, it's something that goes in my head many, many times because it's gonna suck and it's gonna be hard and it's gonna suck and be hard most of the time and it's gonna be good very little bit of the time. But when it's good, it's really good. But most of the time, it's gonna suck. And so, with that, one thing to understand, and for me personally, that I try to understand, and everybody else, I would say, is something I had heard through a podcast I'd listened to when he was asked how many times he had to do the same thing to be before he actually achieved some good result, let's say some kind of success. He said the gentleman that was being interviewed had said he had to do it 4,000 times. He had to do 4,000 in-person consultations before he actually achieved any matter of success. And then after I listened, I asked myself that, am I willing to do this and fail 4,000 times before I achieve success? If I'm not, then why even start? Why do it? Because maybe that's exactly what it's going to take to achieve the success. And this is 4,000 times. I'm not talking about 3, 4 times. I'm talking about 4,000 times. Are you willing to do that? And all that says is, are you willing to do it as long as hard, no matter what it takes until it gets done? Or the first matter of it gets tough and it gets hard and you see that everything's going wrong and that's it, and you throw your hands up and call it bankruptcy or call it closing and say, hey, I can't do it. And that's easy. Anybody can do that, and many people do that, And so if you're not willing to go the full length with all the hardships and all the craziness and everything absolutely that's involved in it, and the suck, and do it 4,000 times, don't start.
I love it. That's fantastic. So now you're the mentor, and hopefully somebody hears this podcast and doesn't get scared away, but uh, creates the resolve and the passion to go out and be successful and has the same passion that you do. So
Absolutely. Oh, it's
that
worth it in the end. It's absolutely worth it. It's just it's a lot of, the resilience. It's the drive, it's the passion, it's the absolute, in the fire inside of every person that you have to have, and not depend on somebody else to keep patting you on the back and and keep uplifting you to go on. You have to do that to yourself and everybody around you, while even especially while it's tough.
I love it. That's some great leadership principles in there. So hopefully somebody out there gets inspired by a friend Igor here. Can't thank you enough for spending a little time with me and sharing your wisdom and your insights and your lessons learned. And for everybody watching, I hope you join us next time for our next exploration into business journeys. Um, so, Igor, thank you again. Any parting
Thank you.
shots, words of wisdom?
Just do it.
I love it. That's awesome. Yeah, sometimes you just got to go and do it. That's awesome. All right. Well, all thanks and have a great day.